All right, welcome. For week 4 of our study, we are diving into one of theology's most profound and, let's be honest, most difficult questions.
And here it is. This is the question at the heart of Theodicy, the problem of evil. It's something people have wrestled with for thousands of years across every faith and every civilization. It really cuts to the core of what it even means to believe.
Okay, so let's really lean into this idea, because it's a challenging one. The perspective we're exploring today suggests that suffering isn't some cosmic mistake or a bug in the system. No, it's a feature. It's an intentional tool for spiritual refinement, almost like a crucible that forges our character.
So, where do we start? Well, we begin with a foundational story of betrayal and redemption, right from the book of Genesis. It's a story that really becomes a key archetype for understanding what purposeful suffering might look like.
This line, wow, this is the absolute climax of Joseph's story. I mean, think about it. After being sold into slavery by his own brothers, after years of unimaginable hardship, he's now standing before them as this powerful ruler. And with these words, he completely reframes his entire life. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was part of a bigger, divine plan that ended up saving his entire family and nation from a famine.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. You have 3 totally distinct theological traditions looking at this one single story, and they all draw a remarkably similar conclusion. For Christians, Joseph's suffering is a prefigurement of the cross. For Rabbinic Judaism, it's a perfect example of these afflictions that actually serve to refine a person. And in the Quran, his trials illustrate this universal principle that trials lead to growth. The evil was human for sure, but the final outcome, that was divine.
So that idea from the rabbinic sources we just touched on, that introduces a very specific and, I gotta say, pretty counterintuitive doctrine. Let's take a closer look at these so-called afflictions of love.
This idea, Yasurin Shalahava, it just radically reframes suffering. It's no longer a sign that God is angry with you or that you're being punished for some sin. Instead, it's presented as a mark of divine attention, a tool used by a loving God to polish and perfect the soul, kind of like how a goldsmith has to use fire to purify gold.
And the key thing here is that this isn't some fringe idea. This concept of accepting hardship as having some kind of divine purpose, it echoes all over the place, across different scriptures. From Job's famous question to the statements in Lamentations and Romans, there's this really consistent thread that suggests a faithful response to suffering is to trust that there's an ultimate, often hidden good at work.
Now let's turn to the Quran, because it presents a very similar concept, but not just as a doctrine for the righteous. It's framed as a divine promise about the very nature of reality itself.
This verse, from a chapter that's actually called The Relief, is repeated, you'll notice, for emphasis. And it doesn't say after hardship comes ease, it says with hardship will be ease. The implication there is that the relief is somehow intertwined with the difficulty itself, that the seed of the solution is already right there inside the trial. Hardship and ease are just inextricably linked parts of life's rhythm.
And putting these side by side just brilliantly illustrates this powerful, shared hope. On one side, you have this divine promise about the physics of reality, that ease is intrinsically connected to hardship. On the other, you have a statement of radical faith, that God is actively working inside all circumstances for an ultimate good. Both give you a framework for profound hope, even when you're right in the middle of that crucible of pain.
So, we've seen how these 3 traditions can frame suffering as a crucible. What are the key takeaways then for our study of Theodicy?
Well, we've seen 3 pretty distinct frames for finding meaning in suffering. First, there's the story of Joseph, which gives us this powerful narrative archetype, showing how even evil human actions can be woven into a larger divine plan. Second, we have that counterintuitive rabbinic doctrine of afflictions of love. And third, there's the Quranic promise about hardship and ease. Each one, in its own way, points to suffering as a meaningful, transformative crucible.
Ultimately, this whole theological framework isn't about trying to eliminate pain or explain away every single tragedy. That's not the point. What it does do is offer a profound challenge. It asks us to completely reorient our perspective. It doesn't give us easy answers, but it does leave us with a really powerful question to carry with us as we reflect on life's inevitable hardships.